hello and welcome to the Photo Brigade podcast. I'm Robert Kaplan and I'm with my good friend Guy Rhodes. How you doing, Guy?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming. Guy is a photographer based in Chicago, or East Chicago, Indiana, to be exact.
Right over the border from Chicago.
But close enough so that you can, go to Chicago whenever you want, so that's good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming. You're just in town to see a show, right, of a friend's?
Yeah, I saw a show last night. And
moving your thing so you're going to talk more into it.
Okay. Yeah, here for a little R&R too, so just kind of seeing some sights. And,
very nice. Yeah. Very nice. How's it been so far?
Good. It's just as cold as Chicago.
Oh, well, there you go. So it's nothing new, at least.
Not at all.
It's pretty awful out, as you might see in the background, because there is people walking by in their parkas and whatnot. But Guy, I want to talk to you about all sorts of stuff. We've known each other for quite some time now.
Almost 10 years.
Almost 10 years, like in person. But before that, we knew each other from online, right?
Right.
Through sportshooter.com.
That's right.
I'm actually going to pull up Sports Shooter if I've got it here. New tab. Sportshooter.com. It's a website that basically was the pre-Facebook of the times, right?
Yeah, and it's remarkable, like, how many professional contacts that I made through Sports Shooter, and not only that, but a lot of people have reached out and
sort of the start of the message boards and stuff for photographers and everything, and everybody had feature pages and member pages, and this is sort of how we all connected with one another before. But I don't so much use it now because of Facebook.
Right.
I mean, when was the last time you posted something on here?
I don't remember. I think it was a thread about lighting or something. Those are usually the posts that catch my interest, and I can kind of chime in and help out with that. I want to tell the story about how I first met you in person, though.
Oh, okay.
It was at Winter X Games in 2007.
Right.
And I had driven there from Phoenix with Mark Rabilis, and we were all staying in this condo together.
Yeah, ESPN magazine it was me and Mark that was shooting, and you were there assisting, right?
Right.
And I had my friend Matt as well with us.
That's right.
And then I believe there was a cameo with Rick Tapia throwing up all over my car.
There was.
Sorry, Rick.
But the funny story that I remember, my first interaction with you was Mark driving the car up to the condo and getting stuck in a snowbank on the side of the road. And I remember we went up to the condo and got some shovels and a bucket of sand. And I remember going back to the car and we're digging it out. And of course, I have a camera in my hand shooting the whole time. And I remember you looking over at me and saying, "Guy, why are you shooting this? What are you doing right now? Why are you shooting this?" And I'm thinking, this is Robert Kaplan. Like, you're a photojournalist too. And like, I remember you were like kind of scolding me in a way, like, get over here and help out.
I was probably just joking too. But I was probably, Mark Rabilis is a good friend of ours, and hopefully we'll have him on the show at some point. But he's just sort of a one-of-a-kind sort of person. That's all I can say. And amazing photographer, amazing motorsports and sports photographer. But he loves his fancy sports cars.
Yes, he does.
And driving, I think it was a Corvette of some sort through the mountains of...
Doesn't work so well in the snow.
In the snow, yeah, of Aspen. No, not so great.
Much.
Not so great. But yeah, I think that's amazing that we've been. Oh, hey, Mike Eisler and Jess, what's up? Sorry, so distracting. You're bringing in the crowd. You see?
Hey,
you know Mike, right?
Of course.
Okay, Mike Eisler's in the house. But it's really crazy just to think, that it's been 10 years and we've been doing what we're doing professionally now for such a long time relative to for us.
Yeah.
How long have you been shooting professionally?
Well, I always tell people I started photography with a serious eye when I was in junior high school. I've always had cameras, but I got really interested in shooting for the yearbook and stuff like that. And so I continued that throughout high school. And when I got there, I took the yearbook teacher, my junior high school yearbook that I had all this work in on my first day. And I was like, I want to shoot for you. Yeah. And I showed him my book, and 2 days later, he sent me out to shoot skateboarders in front of East Chicago Central High School. And that was kind of my first newspaper photo assignment. And I haven't put it down.
Yeah. And you ended up getting published from that?
Yeah. Well, I shot for my high school paper all 4 years. Right. Then when I got up to Columbia College in Chicago, where I graduated college from, my focus kind of shifted to lighting design, because that's what I was doing more of at the time outside of school. So... but all the while, I was still doing stills. In 2004, I started shooting for the Post-Tribune, which is a local paper in my neck of the woods. They were a sister publication of the Chicago Sun-Times, and they just recently were acquired by the Chicago Tribune. So that has allowed me to network with those bigger papers in Chicago and to do shoots for them.
Right on.
And kind of parlayed that into shooting for USA Today Sports Images, and that's how I got hooked up with the Olympics, and here I am.
So we're looking on the computer right now at a handful of beautiful photos of sort of your top photos. We're doing a slideshow. But you mentioned that you're a lighting designer, and so what I'd like to pull up here is one of your lighting. Sorry, there we go. A lighting portfolio that you have here, and we'll bring it up. But can we talk a little bit about this lighting and what you've been doing and how you've been doing it and everything?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I studied lighting in school, and so I was a theater major, but I always tell people, and I have to be careful like who I explain this to because some people take it the wrong way, but I'm not really a theater person. Like I don't wait in line to see Wicked 12 times. And
but you did come to New York to see an off
I did,
Broadway.
and I love seeing shows because especially when it comes to unique spaces, I like seeing how people handle lighting and off-the-wall situations. Like in here, like this isn't necessarily meant to be a studio, but you guys have done your thing and turned it into that.
Yeah,
and
it's
so
great.
I always like seeing other people's approaches to what they do. At the end of the day, though, I tell people that I enjoy telling stories with light, and the theater and the concert world gives me an opportunity in which to do that.
Yeah.
And then other times I'm telling stories with light with a camera and a lens.
Well, I mean, is what photography is taking pictures or recording light.
Absolutely.
You know, and without light, you wouldn't have photography.
Right.
So
and one thing with light too is I tell people that I don't discriminate and I don't really differentiate my skill sets between what we're seeing now and lighting a portrait with strobes. For me, it's all the same thing going on in my head. Whether we're on stage or we're using a still camera or we're doing video, at the end of the day, I always approach it the same way in my mind. And it's just different tools to accomplish that same goal.
Right. Okay, so let me bust out of here. So everything we just looked at, I should mention is you know, photos of lighting design that you've done. You know, these weren't actual shots. I mean, they were shots taken by you, but it was just to kind of demonstrate what you've been doing.
Right.
But you know, we talk about your where was it? The news and pictorial? No, portraits. Do you have a portrait section here that we can show some cool lighting that you've done other than stage lighting?
Yeah, I think in the editorial folder I have a couple.
Editorial, where was it? Sorry, I'm losing it here. Experimental. You're such an experimental. Where's the news and pictorial?
Yeah,
okay.
there we go.
Okay, so do this again.
There's some mixed in here somewhere.
Yeah, and also this is another thing. You take these killer shots of lightning storms.
Yeah.
I've always really enjoyed seeing what you do with those. Let me actually go back to that one. Can we talk about how to capture a shot like that? Oof, I can't seem to get it to stop on that actual photo.
Well, basically, I always have an eye on the weather. I love photographing nature, and when I know that a large storm like this is going to happen, I'm glued to an app on my phone called Radar Scope, which allows you to track a storm and where it's going to end up. And aside from that, it's really just a matter of positioning yourself in a place to capture this kind of thing happening. I was stuck in traffic a year before I shot this on the Kennedy Expressway, looking at Willis Tower, the Sears Tower. It will always be the Sears Tower in Chicago.
Is it just because they changed the sponsorship
or
something?
Yeah, the Willis Insurance Company, I believe, based out of England. They bought the Sears Tower's naming rights, but for Chicagoans, it's always going to be the Sears Tower.
Right.
But I was looking at the Sears Tower in traffic during a storm without a camera set up. I'm in my car, and I saw it get hit 3 times.
Oh, my gosh.
And I was like, wow, this must happen every time it storms. And so from that point, it became a goal to get this image. And so every time there was even an inkling of a storm brewing, I would head out to a spot in the city where I knew that I'd be able to get a good photo. And then it just became a matter of waiting for it to happen.
Right on.
So, yeah, this particular image, the storm blew through. I waited it out in my truck. And as soon as it was raining not hard enough to destroy the gear, I got back out and set up 2 cameras. And within about 5 minutes, this happened.
So what did you shoot this on?
This was shot on a 1D Mark IV Canon.
Canon 1D Mark IV. Oh, speaking of Canon, I just want to give a quick shout out to our good pals at Canon. Canon CPS, Canon Professional Services. They're really helpful with us at the Photo Brigade and also us as photographers. So if you're a Canon shooter, check out CPS, cps.usa.canon.com. All right, Pluggy McPluggerson right there. Okay, so let's move on in your editorial work here. Let me do a slideshow actually. Apple L.
Actually, if you want to show a cool portrait, if you just go to the third one here.
Okay, the third one here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is an image that I did. This is an engagement shoot, and the couple wanted a picture out in the snow. And there was no snow. And it's kind of hard to balance their schedules, their lives, with there actually being a snowstorm outside.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
And then a lot of our snowstorms in Chicago are really brutal, and they're not really a place where you'd want to do a pretty portrait of people. So I kind of pulled some of my theatrical experience into the mix. I'm like, well, we can probably make it snow. So what I did was I got 3 big boxes of Hungry Jack mashed potato flakes.
Are you kidding me?
And I borrowed a really, really big fan from one of these theaters that I work at, Gary Westside Theater. And we blew the potato flakes into the air, and I backlit it with just an Alien Bees strobe. And the snow on the tree was there.
Unethical.
Totally ethical. It's a portrait. It's okay. But the snow on the tree was actually there from a previous storm. So I was like, okay, well, we'll use the tree. We'll help sell the fact that this is real snow. And from there, it was just a matter of putting them in the frame and just kind of letting them have fun. And I'm really happy with the way this came out. Although we did cover their car completely in mashed potato flakes.
Oh, well, so. and hopefully it didn't rain afterwards, right?
Right.
So, yeah, let's just blaze through some of these. I mean, you take beautiful, was this natural light?
Yeah, this is in Las Vegas out on the street.
So it's not just, light. It's, all sorts of light that you do. Obviously, graduation, you're great at capturing moments. And this, obviously production lighting. You like this is something you played with, blue gels and everything. Yeah. Beautiful shots. It's amazing. I love going through your work. I used to love seeing your updates on Sport Shooter. Now it's Facebook and blog posts and photobrigade.com. We feature a lot of your work. But every time you post something, it's like you seem to always have a really unique take on it, whether it's angles, whether it's the lighting, the way you use lighting or see lighting or color or graphics. I mean, this shot's just killer. I remember we had this as our cover photo for our Facebook page for a while. Oh, this shot. Let's pause on that shot. I wish I could just pause on this slideshow here. Let's pull this one up. All right, so
this photo, I've had this picture in my head. And obviously, this has been done many, many times, but I wanted it for myself. And so this is a couple Augusts ago. I knew the full moon was going to happen. And so this was shot from my back porch in East Chicago. This was a 400 with a 2X on a Canon 6D. Yeah. And I waited for 3 days for this to happen. So basically, I would set the camera up on the tripod and get a lawn chair and sit outside and have my headphones in.
Oh, man.
And you're just looking.
So it took you 3 days.
Yeah.
So for people that are listening on, because this is also on podcasting on audio, we're looking at photos on Guy's website. And if you want to see these photos, you can go to our YouTube page, and you can also check us out on thephotobrigade.com/live. But we're looking at a photo of a jet plane, like totally silhouetted against a gigantic moon. And obviously, you shot this with a major telephoto lens,
right?
Because the moon's big in the photo,
really far away,
really far away, and just the chance of having a little plane cross that line of sight.
And it's one of those things too, like the lightning shot of the Sears Tower. I've seen this happen before while I'm driving.
Yeah.
Like, because I love aviation, I love airplanes, and so I'm always kind of looking up and seeing planes fly over, and especially when the moon's nearby. I've seen this happen countless times when I'm not ready for it.
Right, of course.
And so I knew that if I set up and just waited and was just patient enough that eventually I would capture it. And so after
patience is key.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's with everything. You talk about, I've listened to photographers talk for National Geographic, and they say how they see a scene one day and they're like, okay, that's the scene I want, but I want it at this time of day. But I also want it at this time of the day with somebody walking through here. And not only do I want it with this person walking through, I want them with an umbrella silhouetted with a red dress against this yellow, So just waiting, waiting for sometimes you're lucky, sometimes something just happens and you're passing by and, serendipity or whatever.
Right.
But you prove time and time again that executing something like this takes, not just practice, but what's the word I'm looking for?
Patience.
Patience and the preconception.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that I share with people who are just starting out in photography. I mean, that photo was 11 hours of time to capture that one frame. And so in order to get those images, you know, that we can be really proud of, you really have to be willing to invest that time. It's not always going to happen immediately when you step out and just pick your camera up to your face. Like sometimes you really have to invest a lot of time to pull these images off.
Well, I mean, something like this, you got this is the aurora,
yeah? So this is from St. Joseph, Michigan, and this is a place where you usually don't see the auroras this strongly. I have a couple apps on my phone that alert me when the auroras are strong enough to see from my location, and I have a couple kind of go-to spots always in my head where I know that I can have a dark north sky with an interesting foreground element, and that's really key too with a lot of these nature photos. You can go out and shoot lightning all day, pointing your camera straight up in the air and get cool lightning bolts. But in order to make it a really engaging photo, I always try to include a foreground element to give people a sense of space and to kind of, you know, just juxtapose this against something else that's beautiful on its own, like the lighthouse. Yeah.
It's really nice. And is this a long exposure as well? Because you got these lights?
Yeah, this is about 30 seconds.
Okay. Okay. Very cool. So, Guy, what kind of work is your passion right now? I mean, it seems that you just do a little. A lot of photographers talk about being a generalist. A lot of photographers talk about having a specific, type of work that they do. Clearly, you do everything. You do a little bit of everything. Is there something that you have the most passion for? And is it even photography? Is it lighting? Is it more lighting? Is it more because you're also a videographer, which I don't think that we're going to get too much into here, but. You do so many things, and do you do that because you have a passion for all of these things, or is it more because I mean, obviously you have a passion for all these things, but is it more to get more work? I mean, the more broad of a type of genre of stuff you do, the more work you potentially are open to, right?
Yeah. At the end of the day, I just think I'm very passionate about light. And when I'm walking around on the street out here in New York, it's gorgeous. You have the light just slashing through all these little coves between the buildings and things like that.
Oh, yeah. Shafts of light. I call it urban sunshine.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, that's really what draws me to everything I do. On the stage, it's recreating those looks with various instruments, and then with photography, it's just bringing it in and capturing it. But it's one of those things that I can't turn off. I can't shut that off. Like I'm always like, there's times where I'm out to eat with friends and I'm like, wait, and I grab my iPhone and run off to photograph some glowing,
Right.
I was just in Florida doing a shoot, and there were these like heating lamps outside over this patio, and they were red, like they had this red glow coming off them, and there was this couple sitting at the table eating, and it looked like it was lit, like we were on stage, and I was like, wait, no. Like I went to the bathroom and I saw them, like, wait, I have to. Yeah. So I'm like being a total creeper with my phone, like sneaking up on them, like trying to photograph them without them seeing. But stuff like that happens all the time with me, and I just, I can't shut it off.
I'm going to bring back up a photo that we passed here. Can you explain this photo?
So this was the transit of Venus. So the little black dot in the top of the sun there is the planet Venus. And this was only going to happen, it won't happen again in our lifetimes. And so this is a major news event. And so, of course, I'm like, well, I have to go out and try to shoot this. And so this was, I think, again, a 400 with a 2X on a 1D Mark IV. So I have a little more reach there with the crop factor. And I had never photographed the sun, like, I mean, maybe at a sunset, but I mean, this, was still a couple hours away from sunset. And so this is really bright. So what I did is I took neutral density gel that we normally use on lights, and I had like 6 sheets of it layered on the front of my 400 and taped so that I could actually look at the sun.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Yeah, without like frying my retinas, and I hope I didn't. I mean, but
how many fingers am I holding up?
4.
Yeah, 4. Yeah.
So, but so it was kind of, again, thinking outside the box, like what could I use that I already had laying around at a moment's notice to photograph the sun? Like it's not something you do every day.
Right.
So yeah, I got the ND gel, and it ended up working out that I captured a 737 flying across the sun at the same time.
I mean, it's like if you hadn't have gone out to shoot this once-in-a-lifetime experience, but then, you put yourself in the situation and sort of like you were rewarded not only of capturing the image that everyone was going, but you captured this element that no one else got.
Right.
I mean, I don't think I've seen anybody else with anything nearly as cool as that.
Yeah.
Frankly.
I mean, it's...
And you did this from Chicago, it's like... Crazy.
This is actually, I shot that from a landfill in Munster, Indiana, that they've made into a park. And so they still have the giant trash hill on one side of the place. And you would never know it was a landfill unless I told you. It's very nicely landscaped. But I knew I wanted to be somewhere up high. As the sun got lower, it would be unobscured. And so there it was.
Another thing that you seem to get yourself into a lot is aviation photography.
Yeah.
Which is one of my favorite things that you have shot. You've gotten yourself really in with, is it the Angels, or what are they called?
Golden Knights, U.S. Army Golden Knights parachute team. My first shoot with them was in 2006 for the Chicago Air and Water Show. And when I went up with these guys, what they do is they sit you right next to that door, right, that they're all climbing into. And they strap you in, and so you're right next to the door as they're all jumping out. And so when I went up, I was with a couple other media outlets from Chicago, and those guys got in the seat by the door first. So I was sitting on the second seat away from the door, doing like Hail Marys with my camera, trying to get these guys going out. And so I got home, and I'm looking through my take, and I'm just like, I could see the potential for the photos, but because of where I was seated in the plane, they really didn't work out. And so I called Derek Coleman, who was the media contact for the Golden Knights at the time. And I said, Derek, I know you guys have several more flights this weekend. I would really, really love to go up with you and try this again. And they welcomed me with open arms. They said, sure, guy, anytime you want. Here's our takeoff times. Show up and come shoot with us. And so that weekend, I ended up photographing most of their flights. And it was just amazing to be in the air with these guys. I mean, we're professionals with what we do, and these guys are the consummate professionals when it comes to skydiving. And so to just hang out with them and to sit next to an open door of a plane at 12,000 feet, I mean,
did you put something on someone's head on this one?
Yeah, this was a GoPro on top of one of their helmets, and these guys are all super familiar with GoPros. A lot of them have their own, so I brought mine along and just clicked it into one of their mounts and was able to get the jump from a different perspective for the
This is one of my favorite shots that you've ever taken.
Yeah, this actually happened because of really poor weather that day. So normally they jump from 12,500 feet up, but this day, due to a really low ceiling, they were actually jumping at about 2,000 feet. And so when we did the pass over the beach, that's Harold Myers, and he jumped out, and I just laid on the motor drive. This is actually shot in a 10D.
Oh my gosh.
I had a 1D Mark II at the time that was in the shop because I had a lens that got stuck on it.
Oh yeah.
So this is my 10D backup body, 3 frames per second. And they go out of the plane, and you only have them for about a second before they're gone. And so it's just a matter of timing that, and especially the 10D at the time had a pretty significant shutter lag when compared to the 1 series bodies.
A lot of it also takes skill knowing your camera and when to click. A lot of sports photographers, they talk. You talk about laying on the motor drive and stuff. A lot of people just rely on that too much. I think I stopped using the 1Ds or the big sports cameras 5, 6, 7 years ago, and I've been more of a 5D Canon 5D user, and I have shot sports, but it takes a lot more knowledge of the camera to really be able to.
You have to almost anticipate when that peak is going to happen, and
But even now, the 5Ds are getting faster with their their shutter.
I mean, the technology we have now versus 2006 when I shot that is like night and day.
Right.
Even just the image quality, I've noticed that. One thing I talk with a lot of guys about is that I don't feel like I have to tone my images really at all anymore. And I remember when I first started with digital SLRs, I always felt like I really had to be kind of heavy-handed to get things to look the way that I saw them when I was on location.
Right.
Whereas now I just feel the technology has gotten to the point where things really look really good right off.
Yeah, not bad at all. Not bad at all. So let's talk a little bit. Let's take a break from the photos for a minute and talk a little bit about business. You've been a freelance photographer, well, freelance of all these different things for quite some time now. With your business as it is now, what are the breakdowns in terms of you make 20% of your yearly income from photography, videography, lighting design?
Yeah, I don't know that I can really break it down by percentage, just because as different seasons happen, my work kind of ebbs and flows.
Right.
Like right now, I'm headed into the spring where I'm really, really busy on the lighting design end. I'm designing a show right now that I actually just finished drafting before I flew here. When I get back, I'm loading in another musical that I'll be in tech for the next 2 weeks. I have a couple dates with Anthony Hamilton. He's an R&B singer that I'm designing for now. So there's some fly dates for him coming up where we just fly to the destination, do the show, and then come back.
Is this the fellow that you went on tour with recently?
Right.
Okay,
yeah.
the fella.
Right. So yeah, that was a great experience. But yeah, work kind of ebbs and flows, and I can remember being in high school and kind of questioning whether I was going to have to pick one thing one day that I did. I kind of worried that if I did lighting design and photography and video, that all three would somehow suffer because I wasn't really focusing all on one thing. But
right.
As I've gotten a little more into the game, I've realized that it actually is beneficial that I do all three, because again, when the phone is quiet on the lighting design world, oftentimes the photo phone rings and they're like, hey guy, can you do a shoot today?
Yeah.
And then I'm off doing that.
Yeah.
So, and I often find too that the three disciplines that I'm involved in, it keeps the other ones fresh.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at things when I'm lighting with a different set of eyes than when I'm doing photography.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, on the business end, I wouldn't say it really breaks down very evenly all the time. There's, like I said, there's times where I'm making 100% of my income from lighting design, and then there's times where it's 90% from video, depending on if I'm working on an indie film that's going for 6 months.
Right. Do you, in terms of personal work, obviously we've got some experimental. Maybe we should pull up some of the experimental work that you have here. I can't even hardly see. Okay. Select all. There we go. So let's talk some about experimental, and if you want to hit it.
Okay, yeah. Note. So this image was it was snowing one day, and I think I had seen online like somebody that had photographed snowflakes with a microscope, and obviously I don't have a microscope, so couldn't do that. So what I did was I photographed this with two lenses that I held up to the camera, and one of them was backwards. So the lenses weren't actually attached to the body. So I rigged up a piece of glass with a C-stand outside so the snowflakes could fall on it. And then I had a couple lights lighting it underneath. And so I'm standing over this with this contraption, like I think it was 100 to 400 Canon zoom that I was holding backwards, and then a 28 to 70 actually on the body. And so I'm shooting through this other lens, flipped the wrong way. And
it's wild.
Yeah, just beautiful.
Did you know that this was going to happen, or is this like, hey, I'm going to try something?
I think it was a combination of like researching, like, and a lot of times these projects that I come up with are just really spontaneous.
Right.
And so I'm online, like, you know, how do you make a macro lens if you don't have one? And I think that's where I read like, oh, you can just take a normal lens and flip it backwards. So this was when I started experimenting with doing pinhole photography on DSLRs. And so what this is, I just took a piece of, it's called black wrap or cinefoil. We use it in the theater all the time on lights to cut reflections and things like that. And so I just taped it over the gate for the lens, and I took a thumbtack, and it's made various holes in the black wrap. And then I took gaff tape, and I'm able to mask off the different holes. And so depending on which holes are masked off, you can get multiples of the same image in the frame.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, this is just, you know, it's foil and a thumbtack, and you can just get these like really abstract views of things. And
this was the Indy 500, right?
Right.
Our friend Mark Orbilis, you went with him?
Yeah, we've been shooting this together for 5 years now.
I remember you coming back with all this interesting stuff and being like, well, that, you know, that's again what I love about any photographer really is the ability, you know, how many photographers are at the Indy 500?
Right, exactly.
Tons and tons and tons. Everyone's trying to shoot mostly the same thing. A lot of people try to shoot behind the scenes and stuff, but there's nobody that shot Indy 500 pinhole camera digital, or has there? I don't know. Not that I've seen, not that I've heard of, but
you know, and obviously when you're shooting for a wire service, you're expected to get the straight shots too, like everybody else. So, but whenever I go, I always try to do something outside the box. So this is a great example that I remember. Donald Morelli, who's a really well-known photographer, was with me between turns 3 and 4, and he sees me like panning past these race cars with this body, which to him appeared that it didn't even have a lens on it. And he comes over to me, he's like, "What are you doing?
What are you doing?"
And so I showed him, and he's like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." So, yeah, some strange looks that day, but you know,
that's awesome.
In the end, just some, you know, just a different view, and that's another thing that I tell people that are just starting out is that I'm always striving to get different views of something that people are really familiar with, and obviously the Indy 500 has been photographed many, many, many times.
Sure.
So whenever I go to these kind of events, I'm always thinking, how can I capture this in a different way that people haven't seen yet? And so this was a good example of doing that.
Awesome.
you know, whenever there's a big line of photographers somewhere, especially at the Olympics, this happens all the time, where you'll have 20 guys standing shoulder to shoulder, everybody shooting on the same lens with the same camera. And so, of course, everybody's going to get the same picture. Whenever I see those scenarios, I'm always kind of like, I backpedal and I start looking for, like, where else can I go? Is there anywhere else I can go? And like the photo marshals knew me by name by the end of the Olympics because I'm like tugging on their coats, like, can I go stand over there? You see that TV camera cut out? I want to go sit there. I won't get in the way. It never hurts
to ask.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the great things about what you do is you never cease to kind of push the limits of the, you know, opportunities that you can put yourself in by asking.
For sure. This is a personal project that I did in 2004. Wow. So my Uncle Mike, who's my mother's uncle, passed away, and the house that he lived in was the first house that my great-grandmother, who's on the right, when they immigrated to the U.S. from Hungary in 1924, they built this house. Mm-hmm. So in many ways, this house was the first, you know, outpost for my family in America. So when my uncle passed away, it was decided that they were going to sell the house. And so I kind of wanted to do like one last tribute to the place. And so what I did was I took photos from various years, and I went back and photographed the same angle of the empty rooms that the pictures were shot in, and then I photoshopped them on top of each other. So it kind of creates these ghostly images of the past kind of melting away.
I've seen people do things where they put the photo and then, you know, have it in their hand like Dustin Snipes does. But this is totally different. I haven't seen this done. It's really eerie.
It's very eerie.
It's really eerie. Yeah.
So this was a fun project. That's actually me.
I was gonna say, is that you? Yeah.
On the left. So it was very eerie, and you know, I'm in the house completely alone when I'm photographing this, and so it's completely empty, quiet. But I also felt like it was a great way for me to reflect on memories of my uncle and my great grandmother and just being in the house.
Right.
And you know, that's another great thing about photography is we get to have these personal experiences, sometimes in our own minds.
Right.
And it allows us to kind of go to these different places that we wouldn't get to go to otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, this is another great. It's like I keep forgetting about all the cool stuff you do. It's just
So yeah, this is dumping acrylic paint into an aquarium, backlit with a softbox and underlit with a little Vivitar 285 flash.
And this is just a personal thing. Like, one day I'm just gonna mess around. I got nothing going.
Yeah, a friend of mine showed me some examples of this being done with ink, and I didn't have any ink on hand, but I did have some acrylic paint. So I just watered down the acrylic paint and just dump it in the aquarium, and there you go.
Very cool. And this is upside down then?
Yeah, they're all upside down, actually.
Okay, I see. Very cool.
Just flip them over in post. It looks like a tornado. That's
kind of
my favorite one, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Have you ever like considered with all this work that excuse me, with all this work that you've been doing, putting together some sort of gallery beyond web gallery, like doing some sort of show?
Yeah, I would love to, especially with my wet plate work, which I'd love to talk about.
Oh yeah, and this is yet another thing. The wet plate.
I would love to do a gallery show with this stuff, and I think that's kind of the eventual goal with it all. It's just a matter of getting my body of work together. So I've only been doing this for about a year and a half now, so it's a very, very tedious process. So these are wet plate collodion tintypes, and this was a process that was invented in 1851. And basically what you're doing is you're creating a light-sensitive emulsion on aluminum.
So let's show the camera some of these so that we can give them an idea of what it actually...
So right now I'm shooting two sizes. So there's 4x5 and 8x10 that I'm currently doing. And so...
and these are like pieces of aluminum. Is this the same kind of stuff that's being printed on, like, say, at Adorama Pix?
I believe so, yeah. This is actually called trophy plate. And so if you ever get a plaque or an award or something like that, and it has your name engraved on it, this is the same metal that they used to do this. And I get this from a company called Main Trophy Supply. And it's kind of funny, the company's based really near me in Chicago, but everybody that does this across the country gets their plates from this place. So it's kind of a nice luxury that I can just drive there and just pick it up.
Right.
And the owner of the place is really cool because he knows what we're doing with the stuff and like is really into it. So he can, you know, really easily, if I just walk in and say, hey, I need, you know, some 8x10 sheets cut for wet plate, they know exactly what you're doing. But my favorite part about this process is that you're creating one-of-a-kind photos that can't be duplicated. I mean, obviously, this is a sheet of metal.
Right.
So the image that comes in on this plate, I mean, this plate was with me on location when I shot this in the back of the camera. And there's no way that I can duplicate this or recreate it. Obviously, you can scan them and make prints, but this is it. And to make something with your hands that you can, when these are still wet out of the camera, they're very delicate. It's very easy to scratch
these actually
them.
go inside of a camera and
That's
are
right.
exposed.
So I'm using a view camera, an 8x10. The camera that I'm using I got from eBay. It was made in 1896. And the lens that I'm using is from 1880.
Wow.
It's a brass Petzval lens. And so yeah, it's just other than that stuff, it's just a regular view camera. You know, you put the sheet over your head and you're using a ground glass to compose the photo and do that kind of stuff. And yeah, this is the Indy 500. So again, I'm using the Indy 500 as like my guinea pig for
that one. We'll put that one back up over here. It's easier to see on the screen.
Yeah. So this is that plate scan. So this is the actual.
So
real
it actually
deal.
it seems to let's see here. It has a bit of a, you know, there's no real white point in it, right?
Right. Yeah. They have this kind of haunting, like holographic quality, especially ones of people. My mother hates them. She says that I look dead.
Oh,
when
well,
I show-
yeah. So we
show her
go that one. If anybody wants to play and see these wet plates, feel free to come up and grab one and pass it around.
Yeah.
No problem.
So this was actually shot on a piece of blue aluminum. So one thing I started experimenting with is just doing different colors. Because obviously whatever color the aluminum is the color that your shadow is going to be. And then the highlight is created with the silver that is in the chemical that makes this light sensitive when it's inside the camera. So I just said, hey, when I went to the trophy plate place, I was like, I would love to experiment with some different colors. And so he gave me these little sample packs, and they're little 3-inch by 3-inch plates of different colors. So what I did was I created an insert for my plate holder in the camera to hold the little sample plates. And this is just me self-portrait, just experimenting with that.
Very cool. And this is another one of the shots you were just showing. This is a really cool venue that you, not venue, but
yeah, this is City Methodist Church. It's in Gary, Indiana, and
you shoot there a lot.
Yeah, it was abandoned for good in the early '90s, and it's a beautiful place even in its current state.
It's so strange to see modern things in this type of photography because it really makes you feel like the old daguerreotypes or whatever.
For sure.
Yeah, yeah. Way cool, way cool. And have you been doing glass plate photography at all? Or is that something totally different?
No, it's actually the exact same process. So the cool thing about doing these on glass is you end up with both a negative and a positive. So if you want to display it in a gallery, you just back it with usually black felt, or sometimes you'll actually paint the back of the plate black, and you'll have a positive image. And then you can take that plate and put it right in an enlarger and make a print of it just like it was a film negative. So
very cool. Very cool. All right, let's take a quick minute here because I want to bring up and say thank you to a few people. We have, where is it? I had it up here. Well, I guess, camera bags, there we go. I want to say thanks to Temba Bags for constantly supporting Photo Brigade and everything we're doing. But check out temba.com and you get a nice Temba bag for being on the podcast.
Thank
but
you.
they've got some really great gear, and you can get a discount if you go to temba.com and use promo code Photo Brigade. And you get to look at this cool sumo wrestler. They had a fun shoot with him. I got to stop by and actually take pictures behind the scenes on that photo shoot. Nothing's better than getting your pictures with a sumo wrestler.
can't go wrong.
Can't go wrong there. So let's maybe start talking a little bit about sports photography because I keep hounding on it every time I'm on this podcast that there are so many wedges of the photography field that one can be part of. And our friend Mark Rabilis, he is primarily a sports photographer. Like that's all he does. And yeah, he'll take portraits here and there. And he's grown in such a way that moving from editorial to more commercial and contract work with brands, But he's been one of those photographers that found a field and just really, went full speed ahead and is, one of the best at what he does.
Absolutely.
You are really, really great. I know that you've assisted him many, many times, and I'm not sure if it was so much him that got you to shoot a lot more sports, or were you doing sports before you were working with him?
Well, I was doing a lot of local sports before I met Mark, so a lot of like high school football and basketball and things like that. But in many ways, the high school sports are actually a lot more accessible to photographers than a pro sport,
and especially to people like you that want to light and have a lot of fun.
I mean, I did high school football games when I first started really getting into strobes, where we were lighting a football game with strobes at night.
Yeah.
And imagine trying to do that in an NFL game.
So you would have people holding remote strobes at different areas?
Well, I mounted strobes to the press box with big sport reflectors.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously
Wow.
it was
like
an
a
experiment.
like stadium lighting.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
and lighting a field, and you know, I had a lot of people tell me I was crazy. You know, I had a couple people on Sports Shooter fire off me and say, this is elephant gunning. What are you doing? This is ridiculous. But it's like, how would I know that it really wasn't going to work unless I did it for myself?
Did it work?
To a point. I mean, obviously having a
No.
2 second a 2 second recycle time at a football game is kind of hard to deal with.
You're shooting how many watt seconds out onto the field or whatever? Yeah,
It was 1200.
It's like just.
Right. Yeah. But in many ways, if you were able to anticipate those moments, it made some really beautiful imagery. So it wasn't a complete failure. I don't regret doing it, but it was fun nonetheless.
So
This
here's
is another.
Yeah, I was gonna say here's a cool one.
So this is an example of lighting a basketball game where, and this is high school, but what I did was I lit this the same way that we would light a stage for a dance concert.
Oh, okay.
So when we do dance lighting on stage, we light the dancers from the sides, and a lot of times that's the only way we're lighting them. You may bring in a little front fill if there's a moment where you have to see a face or something, but a lot of times it's just about sculpting the dancers' bodies and seeing their muscles and their different forms that they're making. And so I just had this idea, like, what if I lit a basketball game like a dance show? And so this is my old high school, East Chicago Central, and a lot of people there still know me, and so me coming in and mounting lights in random places doesn't raise
Totally
an eyebrow at
normal,
all.
yeah.
And I'm able to just kind of have fun and just get some unique shots like this. And again, at a pro sports arena, this would be really difficult to do. So I think, again, a lot of beginners might think like, oh, well, I have to shoot NBA. If I'm not shooting NBA, I'm not going to be able to get anything worthwhile. But you have athletes in your backyard that are just as beautiful to photograph.
And you give them, you know, a voice, not a voice, but I mean, you know, people get to see these people that they wouldn't normally get to see. You know,
Yeah,
that's really
absolutely.
cool. And it's hard to believe that that's kind of a high school.
Yeah.
Because it looks kind of like an old school.
One of the guys in this photo, the guy who's jumping up to block the shot there, his name's Etuan Moore. He now plays for the Chicago Bulls.
Oh, really? Wow.
So again, that's another thing to consider, is that these athletes in your backyard one day.
Well, we know Bill Frakes. He was, you know, shooting for SI way back in the day. Some young gun baseball player in high school, Alex Rodriguez, and it's like, you know, he's one of the only people that's got these killer portraits and shots of, you know, A-Rod.
Right.
And now he, you know, except now he's doping. Well, they all are, right? No. I mean, that's what I heard you say.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
I'm just kidding. But anyways, I mean, it's you know, you never know who's going to be. Oh, I actually photographed LeBron James. He was from
That's right.
from Akron, I think it was, Ohio, and I'm from Ohio, and I was working for the Columbus Dispatch at the time, and yeah, he was playing, and he was a senior and just dunking and doing press releases, not press releases, press conferences afterwards in like a 3-piece Armani suit in high school.
Yeah.
It's kind of like little odd there, but oh yeah, and so mounting remotes is one thing that I think that, you know, you and I learned a lot of this kind of stuff from like Sports Shooter.
Absolutely.
You know, the pros that have been doing this, the Sports Illustrated photographers, the AP photographers, the Getty photographers, and all those pros that have been mounting these backboard types of things. And then you brought this to high school.
Yeah.
And, you know, what other high school gets you know, photos like this? What
Right.
other local newspaper, you know, has these type, you know, you really go above and beyond, and, you know, probably too much for what you got paid for this, but
Yeah. Definitely.
but, you know, you do it to learn, and I think that's what's great about you.
You know, one mantra that I like to follow with my work, I actually took piano lessons for 17 years growing up, and my piano teacher has a saying, blossom where you're planted. And that's one thing that I follow all the time. If you're somewhere, wherever that is, even if you're not where you want to be at in your career, you need to be doing 110% wherever you are. And that was a great example of that. I'm like, I have the resources to do a backboard remote, and that was an important game, so why not?
Why not?
So
Why
I did
not?
it.
And maybe, and like, you know, maybe at one game or most games you don't get anything from that camera, but there's that
Right.
one chance that you might get a killer shot, and it worked out for you.
Yeah.
What's this? Is this sports related?
Yeah, there's surfers down. It's kind of hard to see on the monitor here, but there's surfers down in the water there. There's a big contingent of guys that surf in Lake Michigan all year round. As long as there's not ice completely blocking the water, these guys are out there surfing. And so I just stumbled upon them one morning. I was out cruising around, and I saw these guys in the lake. And for the next several years, I was out there whenever they were.
So that's really cool. Is that you really make these connections with people, like you did with the aviation fellows and these guys and whatever.
And now I'm Facebook friends with a lot of these guys.
Oh yeah, this shot.
Yeah,
I think we've used a bunch of your shots on Photo Brigade for their cover shot. Yeah. So how did you become such a people person? That's really important, because if you were some weirdo and some really awkward guy, I mean, you are a little weird, but
we all are.
We all are. But how you know what I'm saying? Like, were you just kind of are that way? I mean, I kind of feel like in high school I was friends with everybody. It's like I didn't have any real enemies, except that one kid I got in a fight with. You know who you are. Like, he's watching.
Right. Well, it's funny. Like, I think in a lot of ways, whatever people skills I have helped me with my photography, of course. But over the years, my photography has helped me become a better people person. Because obviously when you're shooting editorial, you have to get caption information. And so you're forced to talk to people. And I can remember, like, my first couple years shooting for the Post-Tribune back when I was still in college. It was kind of awkward for me. It's also awkward, too, to photograph strangers at first. Like, you feel weird about being in somebody's face with a wide-angle lens, and, they're looking like, what? Who's this guy? But after a while, you kind of learn little tricks to diffuse people and to make people comfortable. Introduce yourself, tell them what you're doing, and, things kind of cool off. And so, but yeah, I think photography has kind of helped my people skills a lot over the years. It's kind of a trade-off.
It was funny you mentioned the whole getting in someone's face with a wide-angle lens. One of my professors at college, I went to Ohio University School of Visual Communication, and Bruce Strong, who is now at Syracuse, I believe he's at Syracuse, he started the class. He came up to all of us, and we were all sitting in the lecture room, and he's got his big Canon, a big wide-angle lens, and the first thing he did is he got right up in each one of our faces and just started taking pictures, really obnoxious, like, to show us what it's like to be on the other end. And it's a lesson that stuck with me throughout my entire career, that you have to be aware of your presence. And I think the goal in all, at least journalism and documentary type stuff, is to not even be seen. Is just sort of blend in with the surroundings.
Right.
So a lot of the stuff that you do is heavily lit. I know that you seem to use big cameras and big lenses all the time.
Right.
Do you ever go into these sort of stealth modes, or is it always sort of noticeable? Are you that guy that's like, oh, there's a guy because he's got the big lens?
Yeah, I try to avoid that, and I think I was that guy when I first started. Like, I was really into, I'm gonna wear this, my belt because I want all my lenses here and I want to be ready for anything. Like, but last couple of years, I've tried to slim that down a little bit and kind of be a little more stealthy. Like, I've been shooting a lot of my 6D lately with just
That's what I'm using now, by the way. It's just the 6D.
Yeah.
I have a 5D Mark III and a 6D, and I rarely use my 5D3 anymore.
Yeah.
I just like the size of it. It's full frame.
Yeah. And again, I think that we're getting to the point now where the technology is such that you don't necessarily need a large camera to be ready for any situation, because the cameras are so good in low light now,
right?
Especially with a nice lens on it,
right? I mean, the fact is every time I hear a new camera coming out, whatever the brand manufacturer, and like, oh, it goes up to 180,000 ISO.
Yeah,
like I never go above 800, and I think that's a lot because I use a lot of really nice prime lenses.
Yeah.
What kind of gear do you use? Nice primes, or you seem like a zoom guy? Because you do a lot of sports where you need
primarily zoom, but I love my 51.2.
Right.
The contrast and color on that lens is so nice.
It's a very sexy lens, yeah.
That's one lens where when the pictures come off, I really don't have to touch them because they look like I want them to look.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but one note about big cameras versus small cameras, there's a lot of gear. I think there's situations where both can help you. Like, I certainly know there's times where when I walk into a room and I've got a 70-200 on one shoulder and a wide on the other, and I've got maybe my belt on, and you walk into a situation, people automatically assume, oh, he's supposed to be here.
That's true.
And you're like, especially like at fires and things like that.
Yeah.
They may be shooting somebody away, shooting on their phone, but when you walk in with professional looking gear, the gate's kind of open for you and you can go do what you need to do. But then there's other times where having that 6D with the 50 without the lens hood on it is your friend too, because you don't look like a pro. Like, there's sometimes where you don't want to look like a professional because maybe professional photography isn't allowed, but you still want to go photograph. So it's kind of nice to have those different tools in your kit that you can use for different situations. It's kind of funny to think about that, because there are times where we have to choose our gear not based on what we're doing photographically, but how we're going to be perceived.
Right.
So that's kind of important to consider that when you're going to a shoot.
Yeah. Let's switch over to your Olympics work. So
Yeah.
you've gone to now 2 Olympics?
2, yeah. I did the Vancouver Winter Games in 2010.
Okay.
And then last year the Sochi Games.
And is this going to be? This is which one? Is this both or one?
This is just Sochi.
This is just Sochi. Okay.
Yeah.
So you went up and who'd you shoot this for?
This was for USA Today Sports Images.
Okay.
And so we worked really closely with the newspaper while we were there to give them content that they needed. And so one big story when we first got there was the stray dogs. This family of puppies was born underneath the check-in for the press center in the mountain cluster.
Oh my gosh.
And so this became like a big deal. Like every day there would be like 5 or 6 photographers at times huddled around shooting these puppies.
Oh, yeah.
So
and so you went, if I remember correctly, you went into this one with a large format camera, or
that's
what was
right.
it? The Speed Graphic, was it?
Crown Graphic.
Crown Graphic.
Yeah, so I shot a lot of 4x5 film there too, and of course Dave Burnett, who you've had in this very seat, is a huge inspiration to me. As far as getting back into like older forms of photography and getting back to my roots with film that I learned on. So I actually got to meet him on the slopes at the Olympics. I saw him, trudging down the hill with his large format camera, and I had mine on my shoulder at the time, and he like spotted me, and we were both like, "Hey,
hey!"
And, right? So it's instant connection, and he was so gracious. It's always so cool when you meet photographers that you really look up to, and they're so polite and so humble. Because there are times where you meet photographers and they're not.
Oh yeah.
So Dave Burnett was just so nice and just was so supportive of what I was doing, and he's like, "I'm so glad to see you're shooting film here. Keep it up."
Yeah, some photographers might get offended, like, "Ooh, that's my thing."
Right? No, he was so gracious, and we talked about the different like Aero Ektar lenses that he uses on his 4x5 Speed Graphics, and I told him about my wet plate work that I had just gotten into too, and so that was really cool to spend some time with him there and just talk about what I was up to, and obviously, like I said, he was a big inspiration for me picking up these older formats. So to meet him was really amazing.
Yeah, Dave's a pretty amazing person. I actually have kind of a funny story about doing something sort of similar. So 2009 World Series, I was shooting something for Major League Baseball, and I ended up having extra time, so I went around and did a big time lapse of the Yankees. It just happened that they won that game, and I was playing with time lapse with all these different tripods and gear and running around the stadium like a fool. And people saw me running around doing something totally different. And so there's another friend of mine, David Bergman, who was doing all these, what do you call them, gigapans at all these things.
Yeah.
So someone texted him like, "Kaplan's running around doing gigapans." And he texted me, he's like, "Are you doing gigapans at this thing that I'm doing gigapans at?" I'm like, no, that's time lapse, bro. It's totally different. But yeah, I mean, it's neat to be able to go around and do something totally different and separate yourself from the pack.
For sure.
And that you were able to do that successfully.
Yeah, near the end here, there's a couple of my 4x5 shots from Sochi.
Did you find it difficult shooting the Olympics? Because it's always kind of been one of these things that people talk about, like, it's like everybody wants to shoot the Olympics, this, that, and the other. And then I hear all these stories about how you're shooting right next to with all these other photographers. You're in a media village. You're restrained. It's like you're fighting against the time zone changes and getting deadlines out, and it just sounds to me like it's more hassle than it's worth.
Well, I haven't done a Summer Games yet, and that's really where I hear that it's kind of next level as far as the grind goes. But the Winter Games, I think more than anything, it's just the repetition of traveling to the different venues. You got shuttle buses and the security checks and all that. That can kind of wear on you after a while, but it never gets old having this front row seat to other people who are achieving their life's dreams.
Oh yeah,
these athletes have worked for these sports their entire lives,
and this is their big chance.
And you're right next to them when they're doing this. It's amazing.
And this is an example.
Yeah. So I'm in the red shirt, about 8-9 photographers in on the wall there. And you'll notice I don't have a coat on because there were several days in Sochi where it was 62, 63 degrees.
What?
Like balmy spring weather almost.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a great example of the pack situation that happens at the Olympics. This is the finish line at the cross country event. And so there's times, obviously, where you can't avoid this because the clients that you're shooting for need these pictures. And there are very good photos to be had in these situations, but you don't want to stay here. You don't want to stay in this situation your whole Olympics experience because, again, you're just going to get the photo everybody else has.
Right.
So it's really important to, you know, get your crampons on and walk up the course, as hard as that may be to do sometimes, and to get those different angles, because in the end, you'll appreciate it because you'll have a more well-rounded take.
I see that there are also down on the bottom left here some remote cameras, and I'm sure they're all around in front of that wall.
Yeah, there's a bunch on the ground too in front of the other section.
Were you doing remotes and stuff at this?
No,
or
I took gear to do remotes, but I never did.
Yeah. And at the end here,
This is all us photographers waiting for the shuttle bus to the airport. And don't travel with photographers, guys. If you ever have to travel with a bunch of guys and you can avoid it, don't do it, because we'll fill up the bay in a bus real fast with all our gear.
I bet, yeah.
These poor writers, all they have is their laptops and, you know, some pens, and then we're just taking up all the room, and they have nowhere to put their stuff.
All these cases of gear. Yeah. So this is your speed graphic, or what graphic?
Speed graphic, or crown graphic.
Crown graphic.
Yeah, so the crown graphic, for those of you into these cameras, does not have the focal plane shutter in the back. So the crown graphic only has a shutter in the lens. So you're limited a little bit by your sync speed. I think the speed graphic can go up to 1,000th of a second. This is topped off at 400th. And this was actually a problem for me at the Olympics, because 400th of a second obviously is not always fast enough to freeze a bobsledder, you know, shooting past you. So I kind of like this.
But that almost gives it that aesthetic.
Yeah, the blur here I think kind of works because it shows the speed a little bit.
And you shot black and white too.
Yeah, Kodak Tri-X film.
Huh. And what did you do with the film? Did you just wait till you got home?
Yeah.
So was this more personal?
Yes.
Okay.
Completely personal.
So this didn't show up in the paper or anything like that?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
But yeah, this was just a personal project, and it was something I had to force myself to do a lot of days, because keep in mind, like, that's my entire setup that I'm using to do this. And so this required me to take 2 additional bags on the shuttle bus. So I've got the tripod, I've got the camera bag, and then I've already have a laptop bag, 400, 70 to 200, another body. Yeah. So it was a lot to carry. But in the end, I'm really glad I did it. I wouldn't say every photo that I did there was a complete success technically, obviously, but
you learn, you live and you learn.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've noticed, I shoot Canon, I shoot Leica, and a lot of times when I say I use the Leica or something on a shoot, people tend to be more interested, like, oh wow, what is this camera? And the same thing for this. So I mean, like, they seem interested in the
Okay. And so this is the thing. So these guys were every couple blocks, and when we first got there, we would have never approached these guys. I mean, you know, these guys have AK-47s. They have knives that look like they have been used. I mean, I just like
with blood on them.
Yeah, like we're not approaching these guys because, you know, and then,
tiger blood.
And we were kind of like. There was a certain level of paranoia going into Russia. Like, they're like, you know, don't talk in your hotel rooms about anything. Always assume that it's bugged. Like, seriously.
Yeah.
And so, it's, you know, when we got there, it's kind of like tiptoeing around. But this was week 3. Everything was fine. We realized that, like, they really had things under control security-wise. We felt comfortable. And so I was walking with J.D. Mercer, my roommate, and we saw these guys, and he kind of gave me this look like, yeah, guy, you got to ask him to do it.
Yeah.
And so I went up to them, and so obviously they don't speak English. And so I took the camera out, and I showed it to them. And they looked at it, and they looked at each other, and I'm gestured like, "Can I take your picture?" And they looked at each other again, and they nodded like, "Yeah." So we used Google Translate on our phones to explain that they had to stay really, really still, and that it was going to take a couple minutes, and held it up to them. And, like, there's always this moment when you show people the Google Translate screen, like, man, I hope we're not accidentally, like, cussing them out or something. But so they read it, and they kind of nodded like, okay. And so yeah, we did the shot, and that's the film frame that I ended up with.
Very cool.
So it's kind of cool for me because this kind of summarizes, you know, that view that you had on the street of things that weren't the athletes. Like, this was a big deal, the security that was there.
I remember that was a huge thing, the security at these Olympics here.
But like you said with your Leica, this is an example of when sometimes using a very special format just the doors just fling wide open for you. Like if you know, sometimes if you approach people with a digital camera, everybody knows what that is. Everybody knows what a DSLR is. And,
Yeah.
hey, get out of here, get lost.
Right.
But when you show people this camera that's 40 years old, they know that it's special and people want to participate in those special things. And so for me, this is why this work is becoming so important to me, because we're in an era where everybody is shooting on the same camera, the same lenses, and things are getting very typical very quickly.
Right.
And so when you can bring your client or your subject something that they know is special and not everybody's doing,
Yep.
it can really make things a memorable experience. And I think that's another goal with us as freelancers, is to be memorable. You want people to remember you as opposed to the next guy. You want people to call you back. And when you give people these special experiences, you're kind of set.
Yeah, that's really great. So did you end up going to like the sports shooter workshop back in the day?
Yeah, I went to one. It was called the Sports Shooter Commuter Short Course.
Okay, so we didn't go to that together.
No, that was in 2005, and that was just like a little weekend thing. But that was the first time I met Mark Billis.
Okay.
Robert Meyer, who was another sports shooter member at the time. I don't know if Dustin Snipes was there, but he's another really great photographer.
Dustin Snipes is an amazing. It was really cool. It's kind of like we were the youngsters back on Sports Shooter in the day, and kind of all became friends through this sort of social media, old school social media. How many have you done workshops in the day, or is that the only one you've ever done?
That was really the only one. Yeah, I went to WPPI last year in Las Vegas. Kevin Jarraj, that I shot the Olympics with, was presenting there, and we actually flew back from Moscow on the same flight, and we were hanging out at JFK waiting for our connections, and he just kind of casually was like, yeah, you should come check it out, I'm gonna be speaking. And it was 7 degrees in Chicago at the time, and I was like, 7 degrees, Las Vegas, let's do it.
Why not?
So I went out and checked that out, and WPPI is really cool, actually. It's I feel like it's more...
What's the acronym stand for?
Wedding and Portrait Photographers International.
Okay.
So a lot of great work in their print competition. They have a big gallery that they set up of work that people do, and it's some of the creativity there is just mind-blowing. Like, you look at these prints that people produce, and a lot of these people are doing like a lot of high production stuff, like with their models, and so it's really inspiring to check.
You also you seem to go to a handful of trade shows.
Yeah, NEB, which is a big one, also in Las Vegas, which caters more to video and film production and television. And then LDI is another one I try to go to every couple of years, Lighting Dimensions, or it's actually called Live Design International now. And that's the trade show for my lighting design work, so stuff with stage and that kind of thing. Trade shows are really cool because not only do you get to see new gear, but you get to meet people who represent the companies that work for the gear that you're using, and so you can kind of make some contacts there. If you're in a pinch, give somebody a call.
I've really kept it actually here in New York. I haven't gone to so many of these trade shows elsewhere, but they have every year the Photo Plus Expo here at the Javits Center, and it's, I guess, one of the smaller expos now compared to what they've got in Germany and all that.
Right.
But I've met, every time I go there, I usually think, oh, I'm going to go all 3 days, but I never do because it's, kind of like a tedious walking around thing. But I at least go one day each year, and every year I come back with numerous contacts that somehow pan out in some sort of really great way. And some of them are seeds that you plant for 5 years down the line. Like, I can come back to them and say, hey, we met at this expo at this time, this is what I produced. And especially when you're meeting with brand representatives and people that might want to team up with you in some sort of capacity, or if you're looking for help with support or gear or whatever. A lot of connections that I've made through Photo Brigade are because of these different trade shows. So
I was at NEB a couple years ago, and at the time I was experimenting with a scanner camera. So basically I built a large format camera out of foam core, and I was using a magnifying glass lens on the front of it, and then in the back was a stock Canon USB scanner. And so I was that actually was the prelude to doing wet plate and 4x5 and all this crazy stuff I'm doing now. But I remember being in the Canon booth and like being really aggressive with like showing them these photos that I had done on a Canon scanner. And I remember like I showed one person and they took me to another person, and it got to the point where I felt like I was being kind of annoying with it. But again, like sometimes you have to be a little persistent with people to,
well, that's what those trade shows are for, really.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, that's what they're for. Okay, so a little bit on more business talk before we kind of we've been at this for an hour looking at some of your amazing photos, and I'm sure there's some more galleries that we can plow through as well. You've been freelance. You've never really been a staffer, have you?
No.
And how has that been? Has it been every year? Do you feel like you're getting better at the more administrative side?
Yeah,
and
for
taxes
sure.
and all that kind of stuff?
You know, it's funny that a lot of times as artists, we are not good business people.
Right.
And I think that some of the most successful people that I know in my fields, not only photography, but lighting design too, are the people who really take the time to be very business savvy.
Yeah.
In fact, there's some people that I know that aren't necessarily the best photographers, but they are just so well connected and they network so well that these guys are just getting these really sweet gigs, you know?
Well, not just gigs, but endorsements and everything.
Well, yeah, for sure. So one thing that I would do differently in my education, I would have definitely taken some business classes, because I never sat down and said, I want to own my own business. That's never something that I thought about. I just said, I want to do what I love doing. And then a couple of years out of college, I realized, oh man, I own my own business.
Yeah.
Oh, what? Like, that's never
taxes,
something. Yeah, it's never something that I set out to do. So, yeah, I wish I would have taken some business classes in school and just kind of had more of that mindset going into all this, because again, it wasn't something that I really set out to do. So I think that's really important.
I've learned a lot of my photography business through from online, from podcasts, from speakers at workshops, from folks like John Harrington, who puts out the Better Business Practices for Photographers, which is on Amazon, which you guys should go check out. We'll put the link we'll put links, by the way, in order to down below in our YouTube page. I've been getting live every time I say, I'm like, I'm gonna put something right here, and she's like, damn it. She almost put like the grumpy cat, and just like with no in the last time.
Right.
But what was I saying? God,
we were talking about business.
Right.
One thing too is I think I've learned a lot about how to treat clients from being treated poorly as a client myself. There's some times where I've had experiences with, stores or just, other photographers. They make me scratch my head. I'm like, why would people treat each other that way? Like, as a client, like, why would somebody treat me that way when they want me to come back? And so when I have to deal with clients, I kind of take those experiences and recall them and kind of think, okay, well, what's the best way I can handle this situation and smooth things over if I have to or whatever. So.
So speaking of business, I just wanted to give my usual pitch to NPPA, which is National Press Photographers Association, as well as ASMP, American Society of Media Professionals. These are two organizations that are there. There are fees involved in being a member, but they provide you with all sorts of, legal help, representation, business practices.
Your NPPA membership gets you News Photographer magazine.
Oh,
which
yes.
is a fantastic publication.
Oh,
you can
man.
only get it if you're a member. I've had a couple photos published in News Photographer, so I've had it sent to me and been able to check it out. It's a really, really great publication.
Well, it's really cool because you get to learn about what's going on. There are clip contests every month where you can be presented in the magazine. There's stories about the industry, business, and then also their website nppa.org. You can get all sorts of great information and stories, community resources. So like if you need to find out more about particular issues that are going on in our industry, check out these two websites. All right. Anything? What else? Have we missed something that? Oh, the backlight. Is that the one from the snow? Oh, God, that's cool. Blacklight.
So
not
this
backlight.
this was a show that a friend of mine was doing. They were having like a blacklight party, and he's a musician. And so he asked me if I could do some photos to promote the show. And so then the wheels started turning. I'm like, okay, it's a blacklight party. So how could I photograph people with a blacklight theme?
That's creepy.
So what I did was I just took neon colored tempera paint and we watered it down. And I took a KinoFlow film fixture. So it's just a 4-tube KinoFlow fluorescent light. And just got regular blacklight tubes from the hardware store and just popped them in there. And so they're being front lit with the KinoFlow, and then they're backlit with a Source 4, which is a stage light with a pattern in it. And then we hazed up the air just to make these like different trails of light coming over people like that. You see the like rays behind him. So yeah, this was just, this is really fun. Just, take some paint, and luckily all the models were gung ho about doing it, and so just splattered paint on people, and it was a really fun.
You recently did I don't know if it's in here. I don't think it is, but the story that we recently published on photobrigade.com.
The snow.
Yeah,
those are in there.
Oh, they're in here. Where are they?
It's called.
Film Lighting News, Victoria Association. Snow and
Strobe
Night. There it is. Yeah.
So a couple weeks ago in Chicago, we had this really big blizzard. And for some reason, whenever these big weather events happen, I just always get like really inspired to just go out and document it. I just love nature. I just love the raw power of it all.
I have never seen a snowstorm covered in this way.
Right. I was outside, and I went out during the day just to shoot, normal shots of the drifts that were happening and whatnot. And I started noticing that the snow was really just blowing around a lot, just swirling in the air. And I thought, well, how could I document that? How could I shoot the way the snow is blowing around? And so I decided that if I waited until nighttime, this is kind of an homage to O. Winston Link, who's another really favorite photographer of mine. He's known for shooting the last days of the steam locomotive.
I was going to say the train, big lighting units. Yep.
Yeah, so Link was shooting on 4x5, and he would go out with a lot of these strobes he built himself. And these guys were laying out, like, this is before Pocket Wizards, so they're laying out like miles of sync cable to shoot these locomotives coming through. I mean, it's just amazing. I actually got to check out his museum in Roanoke, Virginia a couple summers ago, and they have all his gear there. It's really, really cool. But anyway, I realized that if I went out at night and I used a strobe, I could isolate the snow blowing around in the air, kind of let everything fall off into black, into the shadows. And so this is an Elinchrom 600 watt second monolight.
It's that little battery powered guy, that little, right?
No, well, actually I used Alien Bee's or a Paul C. Buff Vagabond unit to power it.
Okay.
And then I had a 50-degree sport reflector on it. So like this image of the church, the strobe is actually sitting in the alley behind the church. So it's almost 200 feet from the camera. And I just walked around the block, went around the front of the church, and just looked up and shot. So there you go.
Wow.
So just a different view of a snowstorm that you wouldn't normally think about. But when it came to documenting the snow swirling around, this worked out really well.
Really, really, really cool. Did you ruin any gear? Well, there we go. There's an example.
Yeah,
of gear.
so I had Ziploc bags and cling wrap covering the front of the reflector just to keep any snow out of it. But yeah, it all survived. I used a C-stand for some added stability because it was very, very windy when I was shooting this. So
that's just wild, yeah. Very cool, guy. Very
Thanks.
Cool. And so in terms of business, anything else that any upcoming events, any upcoming projects, things that you're working on that we should chat about?
Well, I'll be doing more wet plate stuff this summer. It's kind of hard to do that in the cold in Chicago right now.
You should hold a like a wet plate seminar or workshop or something in Chicago.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
Or maybe here. Maybe you can come here one day and we can do something in
that'd be great.
in the event space here in New York.
Yeah, we'll set it up. And
I was trying to get you to bring an example so we could do something in the store, but there's just all these.
The chemicals that are used to do wet plates are really volatile. You don't want to fly with them or check them in your bags. It would be kind of bad if they found out.
Right.
I do know of some wet plate photographers who have disguised their chemicals in like wine bottles and things like that. I don't endorse doing that. It's probably not a good deal with the TSA if you get caught.
Right.
But yeah, the preferred method for people who want to travel, you kind of have to ship your chemicals ahead of time with FedEx, and you have to have a dangerous goods endorsement on your account, which you have to take a class for, which I've done, but I just haven't had a chance to really try shipping anything yet.
So I'm going to do a shameless plug here now. I've just announced that I'm going to be doing a photography workshop in Maui, Hawaii.
Wow.
At the luxurious Four Seasons Hotel, a resort. And my friend, do you know Peter Lockley?
I've heard the name.
He's probably from the sports shooter days. He worked for ESPN and ended up at the Washington Times. But anyways, we're putting on this really great workshop at the Four Seasons. We're getting all sorts of really amazing photo opportunities. Canon's going to come in and hook up some amazing gear for the students to use. We're going to have a gallery reception at the end of it, and it's all going to be an all-around an amazing experience.
And it's in Maui.
And it's in Maui, Hawaii. So but today we're recording it, and I'm not sure if it's gone live yet, but we're going to be doing a contest. This is Four Seasons resort, so it's a really fancy, swanky type place. But we're going to be doing a Facebook contest where people can submit their favorite travel image, give a little description about that, and the winner is going to get a free stay and tuition at the workshop.
Are your friends available to enter the
contest? Well, yeah, of course. Okay. Everyone should submit. So I encourage everyone to submit. Check out MauiWorkshop.com, and then you can also check us out, Maui Photo Expedition on Facebook, Twitter, Maui Workshop, Maui Photo Expedition on almost everything. So everybody should keep an eye on that upcoming stuff for me.
Very cool.
All right, Guy. I think that we've pretty much reached the end of this podcast. Do you want to give away your social and your contact information or whatever?
Sure. GuyRhodes.com. If you go to that, my blog has links to my Facebook and Twitter, and my Instagram is Guy_Rhodes, RHODES, and Instagram for me is kind of more of a stream of consciousness. So, it's all those moments I was talking about earlier where I'm walking and I see cool light slashing across a wall. That's the Instagram feed pretty much.
Right. So speaking of Guy Rhodes, I forgot to mention, Rode Microphone has hooked us up with these great microphones and everything. So everybody check out Rode. That's with no H.
Right.
And an O with a slash through it. But I don't think that you have to do that on the website. But check out Rode Microphones. They make some really great gear. Thank you to them for providing us with these very, very, very nice, deep-sounding microphones.
Sounds luxurious.
It does. It does. And everyone else, check us out on thephotobrigade.com. You can watch these events live at thephotobrigade.com/live. Thank you to Adorama and their event space, which is where we're in right now, for providing us with the space and the help making this production happen. You can go to adorama.com/events to check out other events that happen here. We have a monthly meetup where we have photographers speak, we have panels, and we end up putting those up on our YouTube page, Photo Brigade, so we'd love for you to subscribe. So at Photo Brigade on pretty much all social media for us. Guy Rhodes, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Fun. Take care, everyone.